The markets of Soaring Heaven City were incomparably larger than the market city of the Dream Cloud Mountains. Han Li strolled through the Western Market, carefully observing the shops lining both sides of the street. His earlier words to Lu Luo had been truthful. He indeed intended to purchase some rare talisman refining materials to craft several high-grade talismans. Although he still possessed some spirit beast hides and blood from his time in the Scattered Star Seas, he lacked supplementary materials such as high-grade talisman paper and cinnabar. He needed to significantly improve his skills to refine the spirit subjugation talisman. While he had not yet studied it in detail, the bone slip recording the talisman emphasized its formidable power. As something that could save his life in a critical moment, Han Li was not about to abandon it lightly. However, this talisman was far more complex and difficult to refine than ordinary elemental talismans. To increase his chances of success, he needed not only to improve his skill but also to acquire a new talisman brush. His old one was no longer adequate. Unfortunately, while talisman refining materials were relatively easy to find, a satisfactory brush proved elusive. He had already visited 2 stores selling top-grade talisman brushes, but after inspecting them, he could only shake his head and leave. Though these brushes could refine ordinary high-grade talismans, they were insufficient for a secret talisman like the Spirit Subjugation Talisman. Talisman brushes were spirit tools used exclusively by talisman masters and were not commonly seen. Most available were of low or mid-grade quality. If a talisman master lacked sufficient magic power, forcing the use of a high-grade brush would only increase the likelihood of failure. Moreover, talisman masters often dedicated themselves so fully to refining techniques that they neglected cultivation, resulting in most talisman practitioners remaining below the core formation stage. In the entire Heavenly South region, only a handful of core formation stage talisman masters existed. As for nascent soul stage talisman masters, Han Li knew of no such exceptional individuals. Most who reached nascent soul stage specialized in other areas. Nascent soul cultivators varied widely in their talisman refining abilities. Most could only refine 1 or 2 types of high-grade talismans for personal use, but due to the scarcity of high-grade spirit beast hides and blood, mass production was impossible. Their success rates were, as one might expect, exceedingly low. This scarcity made individual high-grade talismans occasionally more valuable than top-grade magic tools. In fact, most elemental high-grade talismans were not particularly powerful, often inferior to magic treasures. This led many cultivators to abandon 5-element techniques after reaching core formation. That said, not all high-grade magic techniques were useless. Han Li knew that some 5-element techniques were so powerful that even nascent soul cultivators would not dare face them directly. However, these techniques were extremely difficult to master, comprehension was complex, and they were inconvenient to deploy. In the time it took to cast one, it was often more practical to attack with magic treasures. Han Li had heard others mention that Mulan spell warriors had broken through these limitations by developing many powerful spirit techniques that could be deployed instantly. This allowed their low-grade spell warriors to rival cultivators of similar level without talismans or magic tools. Their high-grade practitioners combined spirit techniques with magic treasures, doubling their lethality and easily overwhelming opponents of the same level. It was these capabilities that forced the major powers of the Heavenly South to unite against the Mulan tribes. Even then, they could only defend themselves. Truly defeating the enemy remained beyond reach. Since condensing his nascent soul, Han Li had begun studying basic high-grade magic techniques to address his shortcomings. However, the casting speed of these techniques was lamentably slow. The only scenario where he could use them was against an utterly static target. In the time it took to cast, a same-stage cultivator could have killed him 8 times over. That said, combining a high-grade talisman with a magic treasure created a deadly synergy. If such talismans could be used like low-grade ones fired in volleys of 30, even late nascent soul cultivators would have no choice but to flee. Such an attack would be equivalent to being struck simultaneously by 30 nascent soul cultivators. Even with heaven-defying defenses, no one at the nascent soul stage could withstand it. Of course, this remained a fantasy. No one would be so wasteful as to expend hundreds of thousands of spirit stones in a single attack. Moreover, high-grade talismans were not readily available in the cultivation world, and most served auxiliary rather than offensive purposes. As Han Li pondered this, he continued walking through the market, browsing the larger magic tool and general goods stores. Typically, only the larger shops sold top-grade talisman brushes. He saw no need to check smaller shops. They were unlikely to carry even ordinary magic tools, let alone top-grade ones. While it was remotely possible that a small store might have such a rare item, Han Li was unwilling to spend time searching each one. With so many shops in Soaring Heaven City, he simply did not have the time to inspect them all. Alongside Han Li, many other cultivators moved through the streets, purchasing desired items. Most were at the foundation establishment stage, with occasional core formation cultivators. Qi condensation cultivators were scarce, aside from the city's native residents. Han Li concealed his cultivation at the mid-core formation level, attracting only respectful glances from foundation establishment cultivators. Core formation cultivators ignored him after a brief look, allowing him to browse the large stores leisurely and without drawing attention. Just as Han Li left another pavilion in disappointment, he realized that most of the day had passed unnoticed. As darkness fell, shops began lighting moonlight stones. After a moment's hesitation, Han Li decided to check 2 more stores before returning to his residence. No sooner had he made this decision than he heard the sound of a quarrel not far away. A group of cultivators had gathered around the source of the noise. Han Li frowned, placed his hands behind his back, and expressionlessly turned to leave. But as he took his first step, a fierce, resentful voice rang out, "What, are all Drifting Cloud Sect cultivators nothing but thieves? You think you can just walk away after ruining my talisman?" A young man's voice retorted angrily, "It's not that I don't want to pay, I'm short on spirit stones after buying other items. Besides, this is only an elementary mid-grade fire cloud talisman. How can it possibly cost 300 spirit stones? 100 at most. And didn't I offer to leave my sect medallion as collateral? I'll return after borrowing spirit stones from my sect members at the inn." Han Li stopped. The voice sounded familiar, someone he recognized from the Drifting Cloud Sect. After a moment's thought, he headed toward the dispute. Regardless of who it was, as a Grand Elder of the Drifting Cloud Sect, it was unbecoming to pretend he hadn't heard. Soon, Han Li saw a small miscellaneous goods shop in the distance. Several cultivators stood confrontationally in front of it, among them a heroic figure in black Sun Huo of Fire Cloud Mountain, whom Han Li had last seen at the Sword Trial Assembly. In just 20 years, the youth's cultivation had advanced significantly, though his appearance had changed little. He was being confronted by 3 unfriendly-looking cultivators, apparently the shopkeeper and his assistants. The short-bearded shopkeeper glared at Sun Huo and said, "A worthless medallion means nothing to me. You could just return to the Drifting Cloud Sect and leave me with nothing. How would I track you down all the way to the state of Xi? Enough nonsense. If you have no spirit stones, empty your storage pouch and I'll hold your items as collateral. As for that Fire Cloud talisman, you may think it's just a mid-grade talisman, but it was refined by a talisman grandmaster of Soaring Heaven City. Charging only 300 spirit stones is already generous. Are all Drifting Cloud Sect cultivators such scoundrels?" With that, the shopkeeper glanced at the wooden box in his assistant's hands, his face full of regret as if he had suffered a great loss. Unexpectedly, Sun Huo smiled in response, "Fine. Have it your way. This ordinary Fire Cloud talisman was refined by a talisman grandmaster." "What? You think you can judge whether it was made by a grandmaster? Do you simply not want to pay? In that case, don't blame me for calling the city enforcers." The shopkeeper laughed coldly and bluntly threatened him. Sun Huo's face flushed, then paled. There was little doubt which side the 9 Nations Union enforcers would take. Moreover, the matter was ambiguous. He was almost certain to lose the dispute. After a long hesitation, he stepped forward, slapped his storage pouch, and took out a bundle of talismans. Gritting his teeth, he said, "These talismans may not be high grade, but they're worth at least 300 spirit stones." The shopkeeper's expression eased as he reached for them. "This will do." "Wait! Not this one." Sun Huo's expression changed drastically as he pulled the talismans back, quickly retrieving a half-torn yellow talisman before handing over the rest. The shopkeeper sneered, "Ha! So nervous over a torn piece of blank talisman paper? Are Drifting Cloud Sect cultivators really so poor?" He reached again for the talismans. But at that moment, a blurry figure suddenly appeared between them. Sun Huo's heart sank, while the shopkeeper stumbled back several steps, shouting furiously, "Who are you? What do you think you're doing?" The interloper replied expressionlessly, "It's nothing. I just overheard our Drifting Cloud Sect being mentioned disrespectfully 3 times. How about you say it to my face?" As he spoke, an astonishing pressure erupted, forcing nearby cultivators back in shock. Those with weaker cultivation felt as if the sky were pressing down, some even fell to their knees. The 2 core formation cultivators passing by fared slightly better, though their bodies trembled. One cried out in panic, a nascent soul cultivator. "Senior, you." Han Li turned a cold gaze toward them, and they immediately swallowed their words. He didn't recognize the middle-aged cultivators, nor did he know which sect they belonged to. By then, the shopkeeper and his 2 assistants were completely pinned to the ground by the immense spiritual pressure, unable to move. Their panic intensified when they heard Han Li was a nascent soul cultivator. They tried to beg for mercy but could barely gasp, let alone speak. The surrounding cultivators paled. A few of the more timid had already fled, fearing involvement. Han Li showed consideration for Sun Huo, who was only forced back initially. Recognizing Han Li, Sun Huo bowed deeply. Disciple Sun Huo pays respects to martial ancestor Han. Ignoring the 3 men, Han Li turned to the half-torn talisman in Sun Huo's hand and nodded. It seems no introduction is needed. You already know who I am. Recalling his rude words to Han Li in the past, Sun Huo felt deeply uneasy and humbly apologized. This disciple was ignorant of martial ancestors' true identity. I beg forgiveness for my insolence. Han Li looked at him and said slowly, I was not yet a sect elder then, so I won't blame you. However, that torn talisman seems to have something to do with me. Sun Huo was stunned, then suddenly realized, could this ruined talisman be? Han Li waved him off, leave that for later. His eyes narrowed as he gazed at a silver streak of light flying across the sky. Only 9 nations Union protectors were permitted to fly in soaring Heaven City. Sun Huo dared not speak further and stood obediently still, though his heart swelled with excitement and he gripped the talisman paper even more carefully. The streak of light arrived to reveal a yellow-haired old man with mid-core formation cultivation and a small golden sword emblem on his chest, the mark of an enforcer. Though he sensed Han Li's formidable pressure from a distance, the old man had no choice but to confront the situation as it fell under his jurisdiction. Spotting Han Li standing motionless, the enforcer saluted and said, This junior is Wu Fei, an enforcer of Soaring Heaven City. May I ask why senior is angered, and how I may assist? Given the vast gap in cultivation, his tone was naturally respectful. Hands behind his back, Han Li replied indifferently, It's nothing major. I was merely passing by when I heard this shopkeeper speak ill of our drifting cloud sect. I only wished for him to repeat his words. Ah. The shopkeeper must have spoken nonsense. How dare they offend senior? You 3 apologize at once. The old man felt a headache coming on. Matters involving sect reputation could be delicate, so he first offered appeasement before rebuking the shopkeeper and his men. Han Li withdrew his spiritual pressure, allowing the 3 to tremblingly rise. Pale-faced, the shopkeeper stammered, Senior, this junior misspoke. I meant no disrespect to your sect. As for the fire cloud talisman that fellow Daoist ruined, I will not seek compensation. I can only offer my deepest apologies. Han Li frowned, his expression darkening. With a sinister smile, he said, What? You think I'll let you off so easily? First, let me see the fire cloud talisman in that box. If it truly was refined by a grandmaster, I will pay the spirit stones on this disciple's behalf. But if not, he. The shopkeeper reacted quickly, speaking before Han Li could glance at the box, There's no need, senior. That fire cloud talisman is an ordinary talisman. This junior accepts any punishment. Han Li said nothing more and looked at the enforcer. Understanding, the old man bowed, Rest assured, senior. This shopkeeper will be heavily punished. You may leave this matter to me. Very well. I have no time for such trivialities. Sun Huo, come with me. Han Li's figure blurred, reappearing beside Sun Huo. With a flash of yellow light, the 2 vanished into the ground. Nearby cultivators exclaimed in admiration. Such a marvelous earth movement technique was rarely seen. Relieved to see Han Li depart, the enforcer turned an icy gaze toward the 3 offenders, who had begun to relax. You 3, come with me and explain everything truthfully. This matter will not be dismissed lightly. The shopkeeper's relief instantly turned to misery. Meanwhile, Han Li and Sun Huo appeared in a flash of yellow light inside a secluded stone building. Han Li looked intently at Sun Huo. This will do. Let me see that torn talisman paper. Yes, martial ancestor. Sun Huo presented it without hesitation. Han Li took it, glanced briefly, then silently produced the other half. Under Sun Huo's unwavering gaze, he fitted the 2 pieces together. They matched perfectly. Sun Huo's deepest fears vanished, and he bowed deeply. Sun Huo pays respect to master. Han Li nodded calmly and turned the talisman to ash with a flicker of red light. Sun Huo started but quickly composed himself. Han Li found the youth's will satisfactory. It seems you are a descendant of Sun Ergu. But don't call me master yet. First, tell me which generation you are. I am a 7th generation descendant of the ancestor. In his time, Sun Ergu pledged that the Sun clan would serve me. However, due to certain circumstances, I had to leave the Heavenly South, so the Sun clan never truly served me, nor did I offer them protection. Now that a descendant has entered the cultivation world, that pledge may no longer bind you. But since I had ties to your ancestor, I will give you 2 choices. Han Li smiled faintly and continued calmly. The first, I will give you some fine cultivation resources, pills and magic tools, after which we will have no further relation. Do not expect any future consideration from me. The second, fulfill your ancestor's pledge and serve as my retainer. I will place a restriction on you to prevent betrayal and may assign you dangerous tasks. However, I will also do my utmost to advance your cultivation and provide guidance. The benefits will be beyond your imagination, and so long as your aptitude is not too poor, you may even have hope of reaching core formation. Sun Huo's expression shifted, and he seemed at a loss for a moment. This was far from what he had expected. After a long pause, his face grew resolute. Martial ancestor, Han Li cut him off. No need to rush. Give me your answer after the trade fair ends. Use this time to consider carefully. You may find me at my cave residence once we return to the state of Xi. Sun Huo thought this generous and hastily agreed. This disciple will obey. Thank you for your understanding, martial ancestor. Good. That settles it for now. I have other matters to attend to. Take care of yourself. Han Li nodded, relaxed, and vanished in a flash of yellow light. Sun Huo did not leave immediately but stood muttering to himself for a long while before sighing and slowly walking out. By the time Sun Huo departed, Han Li had already returned to his residence. He raised his head to the night sky, a strange expression gradually surfacing on his face.